All right, welcome into today's show. I'm joined by the pitmaster from Smoke Me Silly barbecue team. They're based out of Madison, Alabama. Mr. Robert Vanderipe is on the show with us. Robert, thanks for joining us, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So Robert, maybe is probably better. It's a better term, I think, is co-pitmaster because your better half probably shares a lot of that responsibility. Robert's wife, Lex, who is not with him at the moment, but they are actually coming to us from Lynchburg, Tennessee at the Jack. So exciting stuff. And you guys are fresh off a reserve grand at the the Real Squeal Barbecue Fest.
Hines, Georgia.
That's right. They were for our listeners, Smoke Me Silly was our diagonal neighbors, put it that way. They weren't directly across from us, but they were our diagonal neighbors. So always great folks to have as neighbors. And you guys have been competing for a while. When did you guys start this competition journey?
Oh, shoot. It seems like it's been going on forever. We started actually back in 2011. My company entered the Whistle Stop Barbecue Festival there in Huntsville, Alabama. And they needed some help. I think they needed somebody to help clean up or something like that, take out the trash. And I said, sure, why not? We were sort of new to that area anyway, so I wanted to get involved in a local event. And then the guy that was going to cook chicken dropped out. And they said, hey, you want to cook chicken? So I said, shoot, why not? Of course, at that point, I didn't know anything about barbecue all that much except going out to a restaurant and eating it. I've always enjoyed cooking in the kitchen and doing things like that, but I didn't have a smoker. I mean, I had a grill, but that was about it. So did the research, went out and bought a Weber Smoky Mountain.
There you go.
And then I cooked chicken at that contest for the company. Did horrible, but it didn't matter. I enjoyed it, and it was enough to hook me to continue to get better, if you will.
I love that. So that happened in 2011, and then what was the transition like from cooking for the company to taking it to where you guys are now, right? Because you're a top 10 team at last I checked in KCBS in the nation. So what was that transition like? When did it occur, I guess, is probably the first question.
Wow. Well, after that cook with the company, that was in like May of 2011. And I said, Lex, we need to do a competition. So we entered the backyard division in a contest in Decatur, Alabama. And she still wasn't into it at that time. We were cooking under a 10 by 10 tent. I had that Weber Smoky Mountain, and I bought a kettle. I had a Weber kettle, and I cooked chicken on that and ribs on the WSM. So we got a call on ribs, and she got to go up there and get a check. And she said, oh, I didn't realize this involved me getting shoe money. So that's what she said. But we reinvest all of it in the barbecue anyway. But I guess you could say the addiction started then, definitely. And for her, it started there. And then by the end of 2011, I think we did about 5 or 6 backyard contests. It was a hit and miss there. We did well at a few. I think one of the last ones, we got a first in ribs. And then I said, Lex, I really want to cook brisket. So in the backyard, you don't cook brisket. You cook the chicken and ribs, sometimes pork. I said, man, I want to cook brisket bad. So we went to a class up in northern Iowa. And I want to say it was February timeframe. It was snow on the ground. But I convinced her to go up there for 2 teams that were top in KCBS at the time. And we went up there and learned a lot, actually, to go to the pro side. And that's sort of where the pro started, the pro circuit. And we were started out in a small 7x14 trailer on the pro side, cooking on all Weber Smoky Mountains. We did that for a while. We included a Yoder pellet cooker at some point. And then we went to our current cooker, which is a Champion Smoker and Grills offset cooker, sort of like a Jambo. And we've been on that ever since. I still cook chicken on the Weber Smoky Mountain though. I haven't changed that.
I love that. So much like a lot of the guests that we have on the show, very humble beginnings, with the 10 by 10 tent and the Weber kettle and the Smoky Mountain. And also much like a lot of guests on the show, the first time that you heard your name called and got a check was kind of the hook was set, so to speak.
Yeah.
We hear that a lot on this show, and I think it's an interesting aspect of all of this. So in looking at your body of work, if we look at 2022, how many competitions are you going to end with this year?
Oh, wow. We'll be over 30. I know that. Somewhere between 30 and 34, I think. And surprisingly enough, I think not the next one or the one after that. I think the first day of Shelby will be our 300th contest.
Wow.
Since we've been going pro.
Which is, you went pro in 2012, if I remember correctly. So yeah. You're averaging about 30 contests a year. It's 10 years. And so that's definitely getting after it. And clearly it shows with the fact that, you are a top ranked team in the country. One thing I have noticed is the top ranked teams, one of the things that they do more than anybody else is they cook more than anybody else.
Yeah.
So, it's very difficult to replicate kind of a game day feel, so to speak, at the house. I mean, I know you can practice all you want, but it's just not quite the same. And now you guys find yourselves at the Jack, which to some would be considered the Super Bowl of barbecue, right up there along with the American Royal. Yeah. What about this? Is this your first time at the Jack?
No, actually, we've been fortunate enough. This will be our 6th time at the Jack. So we've been here a few times.
So in your mind, what's special about the Jack versus just, any other contest?
It's one of those that, it's definitely not easy to get into. Not only got to win a contest, but you got to go through a draw. And I think it's that whole feel of being down here. I mean, if you saw the venue and been through it, the 5 or 6 years that we have, you would think, well, the venue's okay. It's just the whole atmosphere of being down in Lynchburg. In fact, when it rains here, it's just a big mud pit. It's so miserable. We've been here a couple of years where it's just rained the entire time. But it's just something about being here in Lynchburg. It's just a great thing. And I'm very fortunate to have been here as many times as we have.
That's awesome. So give us an idea how many teams you're going to be going up against? Hundreds?
Not sure. There probably is that many because they got the international teams back this year.
That's right.
So, I don't know the exact number. I have trouble keeping track of that, but I think it is close to 100.
Wow. That's incredible. Plus, like you said, the atmosphere, which I think is important and something that, we chatted about a bit at the last contest out in Lyons, was just this idea of helping to bridge the gap between barbecue teams and patrons or the general public. And one thing that I thought was interesting that you mentioned is, getting back to your roots, getting back to cooking under a 10 by 10 where you can interact with people, which I think it brings up a great point, because I think that is one thing that the competition community needs to continue to grow the sport, if you will. And so I'm curious, as you look out into 2023, what does that look like for you? Is it just simply getting back to your roots, cold turkey, or do you envision some sort of a transition? Because I know you've got a really nice RV that might be a little difficult to give up.
I don't see us transitioning to a tent. We tried that earlier in the year. We actually There was a contest we were supposed to go to in Mississippi, and they canceled at the last minute. Of course, have meat trimmed, defrosted, ready to go. So the only other contest was Oklahoma City area. So I convinced Lex, only because my grandson lives near Oklahoma City, to load the truck, hook up the smoker, and we actually cooked under a tent. Next to Paul and Lynn of Rooters and Tutors, they did the same thing. So it was probably miserable weather. And she'd let me know plenty of times, like, what the heck are we doing here? But she's too used to the motorhome, so I don't see us transitioning to a tent.
Right. Tent's not going to happen, but maybe getting out there and doing more of the cooking outside, or maybe the prep work outside, so you can, interact with those folks that do happen to come walk by and ask questions. And I think it brings up a big question on my mind too, and that is, what do you think that we as a barbecue competition community need to do to help bridge that gap and continue to grow this?
I see what you're saying. We interact quite a bit with the barbecue community and any patrons, like especially here. There are a lot of non-barbecuers or people that are interested in barbecue that come down here and visit during this contest.
Sure.
There was a young couple out of Madison, Alabama that I had never met before, and he was very interested in starting to compete. Well, he stopped by last year when we were at the Jack, and we talked for a while. And guess what? He's competed in about 4 or 5 comps now. I've helped him out. But that's all it usually takes. Anybody that has interest, come out to a comp. There's always somebody that'll talk to you. I might not be outside the whole time, especially during turn-ins, but we're outside quite a bit. And we interact with a lot of the judges, barbecue judges. We know a lot of them. Usually when we're cooking our Huntsville comp, because we know so many, we get a lot of visitors during that competition.
Right.
Yeah. Over the years, we've become friends with a lot of people that don't necessarily compete, people that judge, all walks of people that enjoy the barbecue competition sort of venue, if you will.
So over these last 10 years, and this is going to be a difficult question, I know, might put you on the spot a little bit, but over these last 10 years, you cooked a lot of different competitions, great weather, bad weather, good venues, bad venues. What's your most memorable competition?
Whoa, that's tough. Honestly, I want to say the most memorable is the first year we came here to the Jack.
Mm-hmm.
Our first year here, we're in that little 7x14 trailer, cooking our Weber Smoky Mountains, and we actually got a first in ribs here at the Jack.
That's awesome.
That was a major win for us. Just to win a category here was a great experience. So that's definitely one of them. But there's so many. I think obviously we're addicted to this and we're competitive. But one of my favorite things is just going all over this country, going to these small towns that normally nobody would ever go to.
Right.
And we get to experience their culture. We went to Baldwin City, Kansas this year, a small town. It's called Smoking on the Bricks because they have all brick pavers down the center of the town, and that's where we're competing. But you go and enjoy the restaurants there, the people that live there, and it's just a great experience.
Yeah, that you bring up another great point, and that is, the ability to see more of this country. We've stayed in our short little tenure. We've stayed pretty much in the Southeast. I know that you and Lex tend to go out a little bit farther, maybe on the West Coast, East Coast, that kind of thing. You're also somewhat centrally located in the U.S. to be able to do that a little bit easier. So educate me, because I'm curious about Alabama barbecue. Is there such a thing?
I guess there is. Everybody associates Alabama barbecue with the white sauce for chicken, but I tried once when we moved to Alabama. I'm originally a New Jersey boy, so I tried it once. I didn't like it so much. Maybe I'll have to try it again. I don't know. It was years ago. But as far as KCBS and competing, Alabama barbecue is not much different than anywhere else.
Right.
I was talking to some judges in Lions last week, and they went over to Europe to judge a competition, KCBS competition. And they said they couldn't tell the difference between over there and here.
Wow.
As far as KCBS is concerned, I think it's pretty darn close.
Right.
I mean, we've done GBA contests down in southern Georgia. We've done a couple, and I cook KCBS flavors. The same thing I'm cooking now, and we did well. So,
what about outside the sanctioning world? If you were, and really where I'm going with this, you hear, like, for example, you hear about, Texas, is all about brisket, and you hear, Georgia is more about, the pork, and Carolina is a little bit of mix of pork, and then you've got the mustard base versus that's really where I was curious about if there really was a true flavor of Alabama. It seems like, though, there is for chicken, but maybe not for the other categories.
I think white sauce is the only thing that's sort of Alabama is known for. I don't think anything else. I mean, when we go out to barbecue competition or barbecue restaurants, you don't see so much brisket. It's very centered on the pork, I think.
Yes.
More than anything. So yeah, and as far as brisket, we've been in the Missouri area a few times this year, and I actually had somebody from the Kansas City area hanging out with us in Huntsville when we cooked, and I made some burnt ends there with I didn't turn them in, but made some burnt ends and have them try it. They were pretty saucy. I'm like, I don't like sweet on my brisket.
Right.
But I was surprised when he said he tried that, and he said, yeah, that's nowhere near as saucy as we usually get up in that area. So I think down our way, if there is brisket, I don't think there's much sauce on it.
Right.
As far as Texas, I don't think I've been a long time since I've been down to Texas to have brisket. So I'm assuming it's not. So, but in the Kansas City area, definitely.
So speaking of brisket, one of the things you mentioned early in the journey was that you really wanted to cook brisket. Is that your favorite category to cook?
It is. I enjoy cooking brisket. It's changed a lot over the years, I think. I mean, originally that was definitely my favorite for a while, and that was our best category. We always wound up in the top 10 in brisket to start out. I turn in burnt ends all the time. I just love good fatty burnt end,
Right.
But the judges don't care for it so much nowadays. So we don't usually cook a point that much now. But yeah, I like cooking ribs. It changes. I'll be honest, my least favorite is pork.
That seems to be a going pattern I'm noticing.
Yeah, I don't mind chicken. Chicken is all right too. But it's usually when we get to the pork turn in, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, it seems like, and I think it, of course, has something to do with that. You have so many different parts of that muscle that you have to make sure are done correctly and arranged correctly. And it's funny you say that, because in five KCBS competitions for us, pork is far and away our worst category. So it's proven to be elusive for us, and it is tough. I share the same sentiment when I know pork is up for the turn-in.
And you know what? I think it's even harder than brisket. I think brisket's easy pork is, to be honest, especially if you're flat.
And most teams are cooking the flat. As you said, the judges aren't real big, at least now, on the burn ends and the real fatty stuff. But I've even heard judges make comments that if there's no burnt ends in the box, they automatically mark something down, which is, I don't know if that's the correct approach, but I'm not a judge, so what do I know?
It's definitely against KCBS guidelines, so they shouldn't be doing that.
Right. But yes, brisket is my favorite category to cook by far. And you hit the nail on the head. There's just not a lot of brisket in Alabama. There's not a lot of brisket in Georgia and South Carolina. It's just not really a thing. And, obviously cooking competition brisket and cooking brisket at the house are two different things. I've just found the right mix of rubs for at home recipes, and people love it. And I don't say that to be arrogant. I say that just to be upfront that I think the restaurants, at least locally around us, struggle with brisket because, as you know, as soon as you slice it, it starts to dry out. And, they're cooking so much, they can't baby it like you and I can.
Yeah.
And that brings me to another question I was curious about is, do you guys, are you getting asked constantly to cook for other people or cater or anything like that? Has that come up in your journey?
Not so much. I mean, we have had people ask if we could cater, but that's a whole nother ball game. I mean, I know some people that cater, and that's a lot of work. That's no joke. I mean, that's a whole different way of doing what we do. I'm used to cooking a small portion for a small amount of judges. I can't imagine cooking that large a quantity for, like, let's say 100 people. I wouldn't mind getting into that and trying it out, but I know that's a lot. That's a whole different, like I said, it's a whole different ball game.
It is a lot of work. We've recently started to branch off into it. It's a lot of work simply because of the quantity, but the preparation is not nearly as intensive because we're not, as an example, I'm not, if we cook 40 butts for something, I'm not going to inject 40 butts. So, but to your point, it is a lot. And really, I was going down that road because one of the things that I heard or have heard repeatedly is that, barbecue competing is a losing proposition financially. And I would agree with that in my short little, 1 year of experience. I would agree that, just from a number standpoint, if you're spending $1,000 a weekend and you're not winning the grand champion or the reserve grand, or you're not winning anything, that's, for most, that would be difficult to sustain that level of competing. And so that's why I was asking about the catering side of it, because I'm wired that if someone tells me I can't do something or that something is very difficult to do, it's probably a flaw of mine, but I try to figure out a way to make it happen. And, one of those ways I think is in catering or doing, certain things on the side. But I'll say this, and maybe you've run into this too, is if and you guys are cooking way more than we are, you probably get to the point where you just maybe don't want to cook barbecue.
Yeah, usually I only cook barbecue at the competition, and
Right.
whatever we have left over, we give away. We used to bring it all home and back seal it in like 1 pound packs, like the pork, and sell it.
Yeah.
But now that I'm 100% telework now, so I'm not there in the office with all those people, all the buyers, if you will. So mainly, as much as we've been going, the last thing we want to do is come home and put pork into 1 pound packs and back seal it and all that stuff. So we try to give it away if we can. Like I said, there's judges that we know will say, "Hey, do you want some?" Even people that pass, I know we're not supposed to do that, but if there's somebody coming by after the fact, we'll give them a whole pan of barbecue.
Right.
We have no issue with that. It's better than throwing it away for sure.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that's probably some of the best barbecue they will have eaten up to that point in their life. So that's pretty cool. I anything that we can do to continue to share this barbecue community with the general public, with the patrons, because they really truly don't understand it. And it's just, it's like anything else in life. They're not in it. So they don't really understand it, in the same way that I couldn't even tell you how to change the oil in my truck. That's not what I do. So, very similar to that. But
Did
One thing I wanted to
cook
I'm sorry, go ahead.
you cook Baxley, Georgia?
We did.
Yeah, I like how they did the People's Choice.
I did
Uh,
too.
I because you know why? Because they put the tables out in front of all the teams. Even we had volunteers, so we didn't have to hand it out. But I think it got those patrons a sense of they're actually going to that team and getting the product, right? Instead of going to one tent that's a People's Choice tent. I think Waynesboro does the same thing.
Yep.
I think that's a good way to do it. There was another competition we did in Helen, Arkansas. It's associated with big blues festival, and they actually did People's Choice after brisket turn in. It was like 45 minutes after or something like that. They sold tickets for it. So guess what? All these teams are wanting to get rid of their pork anyway. So they just pulled it all, put it into a pan, turned it in, and you just had more entries right there.
Right.
They sold out. So that's probably one of the only times we've actually done, very few times that we've done People's Choice. And I like that after we do turn in, it just makes it easy.
I agree.
Where Baxley, we actually brought pork that we had done frozen had before.
Right.
But at least with that other one, if you do it after the fact, but then again, you don't. I guess they're worried about the number of people that are going to want to eat it 2:30 in the afternoon, I guess.
Yeah, I can see both sides of that, but I would agree just fundamentally having, doing something like that to involve the public to some degree. I think otherwise, from a promoter standpoint, from an event organizer standpoint, what's the point of teams even being there? If they're not engaging with the public and if it's very separate. I've been to a few contests where it's not open to the public, and I'm thinking to myself, I get it from an organizer standpoint. Maybe they don't want a bunch of people there, but I'm also thinking ahead, like about the viability of competitive barbecue, and I'm just not so sure how compelling of an argument we as a community can make to an organizer to say, hey, have us separate on another field. We don't want to be part of, whatever your festival's going, whatever's going on with your festival. I don't know. I tend to get really passionate about that because I do think that we need to bridge that gap between the promoters and the teams to make it compelling for the promoters to even have us out there. Because my understanding, just talking to a few promoters, my understanding is that it is having competition teams there is generally a loss leader for them, financially speaking.
Not unless the only way they're making money is on a People's Choice type of thing,
Right.
or tickets.
Right.
But that's about it.
Yeah.
And I don't mind going where there's people there, but I also like going to the ones where it's just a bunch of us cooks in a campground. What was that series they did in the Carolinas there? Elite Barbecue. He was involved in that.
Yep.
I can't remember what series that was, but he did it in a lot of campgrounds, and it was a money in, money out, right? You paid your entry fee, you paid for your own campground.
Yep.
And it's just a bunch of us showing up in a campground competing against each other. It wasn't a high dollar payout. Depends on how many. But I mean, that's if you take barbecue back to its roots, especially in KCBS, that's all it was. A bunch of people that wanted to compete against each other.
Yeah.
It wasn't about, I hear what you're saying about the community and getting, the public involved, but that's not what it was about originally.
Right.
It was about everybody's love of cooking barbecue, and we just wanted to compete against each other for bragging, Now it's become about the money, right? Everybody wants a big payout.
Sure.
Even though the odds of winning are lower, they still want a big payout. And I guess I can see that, but this has never been a sport or hobby that you're going to make money. It's rare for a few, but yeah.
Right. No, that's a great point. And you're right. I mean, I know it had very simple beginnings whenever it was, I guess in the 80s that KCBS was formed and started to take off. And, like I said, I think it's just, for me, it's when I look out, I want there to be younger teams getting involved in this and, I want, um, I see it both ways. I like being able to go. I've gone to several contests at campgrounds, which is really nice. You're camping, it's just cooks. And I've been to ones where it's tons of people, like in Greenwood.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you know, so I like both styles.
do
But yeah,
too.
my big thing is I really just want to continue to see it grow and grow and teach like my boys about what I've learned and just kind of keep passing that on. So that's just, I don't know, maybe I'm a nerd about it, but that's just what I get super fired up about it. So, but shifting gears for a second, wanted to chat about a couple of your sponsors. So Atlanta Barbecue Store, I know great folks, Brian and boy, I'm drawing a blank. Ellen, Brian and Ellen Jarvis are awesome people. They take good care of the barbecue teams, and I know they're one of your sponsors, and you had another sponsor as well, correct?
Yeah, Compart Family Farms. They both have been my sponsors now. Compart's been my sponsor probably for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. When we started on the BBQ show, they were a sponsor, and then they just kept us as a sponsor team after they were done with the show. So I'm very grateful for that. It makes it a little bit more affordable on the pork side.
I
And then
bet.
I've been with Atlanta Barbecue Store when the previous owner had it, when he started it. So yeah, we've been with the Atlanta Barbecue Store for a while.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, like I said, they're awesome people over there at the Atlanta Barbecue Store, and the Compart Duroc pork is amazing. I actually ordered some. Facebook actually told me I needed to order some, so I did because they're on to me. Facebook has got me figured out. Um, but, but I guess as we wind down the show, what are some parting words of wisdom that you have for those aspiring to build a team, or those that are already have teams? What kind of words of wisdom would you share with those folks?
I think those be prepared to spend a lot of money.
Yeah,
uh, that's for sure. Back in the day, and Lex tells people that I really geeked out on barbecue because I spent so much time just on the internet reading about it. Even today, I think 2 years ago, after we did a points race in 2019, 2020, I was burnt out. Uh, I would say I didn't think so much about barbecue, but I don't know. I got the fuse lit again the end of last year, and I'm back to that way now. I'm watching barbecue league videos all the time. I'm thinking about my own barbecue. What can we do? So I think that's the key for anybody that's already into it. Just do your research, man. There's so much resources out there.
right.
Barbecue league isn't that expensive, uh, and there's some great information there. I'm still learning stuff. I've been doing this for a long time, and there's always something to learn, and
That's right.
way better.
That is
So,
exactly right. And how can our listeners follow you or connect with you? I know that you are on Facebook, Smoke Me Silly, as well as Instagram.
yes, I believe we have. That's Lex's realm, but yeah, I think we're on Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel, Silly BBQ Life.
There you go.
We did videos for an entire season. Hopefully, going to get back into that next year. But we enjoyed doing that, and the whole premise of those videos was to not so much highlight what we were doing at a comp, the barbecue, but also the surrounding area. Like we go out and check out things in that community. So yeah, check out those videos too.
That's awesome. And we'll have those for our listeners. We'll have all those links in our show notes. You can follow Smoke Me Silly. And Robert, enjoy the conversation, sir. Thanks so much again for your time, and best of luck to you and Lex at the Jack.
All right. Thank you very much.